there is nothing that you can compare it to. There are no words really to explain what it felt like.
I remember one minute being in this world, and the next minute I literally was in a whole other realm. I felt like I was formless. I felt free.
My consciousness was floating above my body. This down here just felt like a shell, but it was my shell.
My spirit and soul immediately left my body in the car and went through the tunnel and out the other end into pure white light.
I've never been so in love or at home. It's where I'm from.
In that white light was truly the most amazing feeling, if you could imagine absolute love and peace.
Where I went is an eternity, where it's forever. There is no linear time, there is no clock ticking, there is no calendar. At the time I had no explanation for any of this because I was an atheist and I didn't believe you could exist beyond your body.
So what do you think happens when we die? Is there some sort of an afterlife waiting for us, or is this it? Are we really just flesh and bone and nothing more? Or is there some essence to our being that continues on after the death of the physical body? What's up guys, my name is Jonas, and in this video I'm going to share some of the fascinating research into near-death experiences, including the findings from the largest ever study of its kind. And some of the evidence I'm about to share here is so compelling that it clearly demonstrates that there is more to the mystery of consciousness than we currently understand, and that we need to rethink our basic scientific assumptions about life and death. That's an idea that I've been advancing for several years now here on this channel, so let's get into it.
Here I am as a physician who's actually studied near-death experiences and making an amazing claim that the evidence is so strong that certainly to me it proves the existence of an afterlife. There's absolutely no medical explanation, even theoretically possible, for having a cardiac arrest, having your heart stop, and being under general anesthesia, and having these incredibly detailed, lucid, vivid, dramatic near-death experiences.
Near-death experiences occur when an individual is resuscitated after having gone beyond the threshold of death, which means that their heart has stopped beating, they have no pulse, they're not breathing, and their brain has shut down. And yet, even during periods where there is no brain function, near-death experiencers report that they remain aware the entire time, and not only that, but they often come back to report incredibly profound, life-changing experiences of traveling out of the body and visiting some sort of an afterlife beyond the physical universe. According to multiple studies, around 5% of people experience this at some point in their life, and that's a significant number. That's more than 10 million people in the United States alone, and millions more all across the world who have experienced this. And that's part of what makes this compelling, is that you literally have millions of people from all over the world reporting this same phenomenon. And as medical technology continues to advance, it's bringing back more and more people from the brink of death.
From what we can determine, which is actually fascinating, and it raises questions about our whole science, about what happens when we die, is that it appears that even though people have gone beyond that threshold of death and their brain has shut down, that entity that we call consciousness, the mind, the psyche, whatever you want to call it, does not seem to become annihilated. From the evidence we have, that at least tens of minutes, if not hours of time afterwards. How long beyond that, we don't know at this point.
This is Dr. Sam Parnia. He's a cardiologist, and he's been a leading researcher into near-death experiences. He helped to conduct the largest ever study into near-death experiences called the Awareness During Resuscitation Study, which included more than 2,000 people from 15 different hospitals who had been resuscitated after being labeled clinically dead. And the study found that 40% of people described some kind of awareness in the time before their hearts were restarted, and around 10% of participants had a full-on near-death experience. This study also documented several cases where people accurately reported a detailed awareness of the things going on in the room around their body during a period where there was no brain activity. In other words, they saw and heard things that brain science says they should not have been able to. Even a hallucination would require some level of brain activity.
The most provocative evidence for heaven from near-death experiences seems to me to be cases where people come back from near-death experiences and they have information there's no way they could have had if they had just had a physical experience while on an operating table. For example, some people come back and they're able to recount conversations that their relatives have had 5 blocks away from the hospital.
There are instances in which people claim to separate from their body and they can correctly describe things from other positions, other places. That's when I become more interested, because those are things that can be tested.
And the patient said, "You were the one who was there when I was brought in." This patient was in deep coma, couldn't see anything, but the patient told him that he could see everything from above his body, and he could see the doctors and the nurses what they done.
The thing that astounded me was that he described that operating room, things that there is no way he knew. I mean, he didn't wake up in the operating room and see all this stuff. I mean, he was out, and was out for, I don't know, even a day or two. So what does that tell you?
When near-death experiencers have their life-threatening event, they're generally unconscious and often clinically dead. There should be absolutely no possibility of them having a conscious, organized experience. But what my research found was that 76% of the near-death experiencers surveyed indicated that their level of consciousness and alertness was actually greater than their level of consciousness and alertness during their everyday life. And that is medically inexplicable.
Even more incredible are the cases of near-death experiences among people who have been blind from birth. So they have never known light or color or vision, and yet during their near-death experiences they report being suddenly able to see. They can give full visual impressions of what happened around their body, with details that are later confirmed to be accurate. A number of these cases are documented and discussed here in this article. It goes without saying that, again, mainstream science has no explanation for this.
I've never seen anything, no light, no shadows, no nothing. The next thing I recall, I was in Harborview Medical Center and looking down at everything that was happening. I'm not accustomed to see things visually because I'd never had before. I finally recognized my wedding ring and my hair. I was overwhelmed by that experience because I couldn't really imagine what light was like.
With our current medical knowledge, we believe that consciousness is a product of brain function. So it should be impossible that patients should have enhanced consciousness with the possibility of perceptions and memories, etc. It's impossible, but it still happens. So we have to change our ideas about the relationship between consciousness and the brain.
Now, another key piece of evidence here is that although near-death experiences occur under many different circumstances, people from all over the world almost always report very similar characteristics and descriptions of their experiences.
If you look through cultures, through different ages, children as young as 3 years old, people from all over the world, from Japan, from India, and other places, have all described essentially the same experience. Feelings of peace, feelings of seeing a bright, warm, welcoming light, sometimes a description of going through a tunnel, sometimes encountering a being that's full of love, compassion.
And the consistencies in these reports suggest that these are not just hallucinations, because if these were just hallucinations, obviously everyone would be reporting very different experiences. And yet these near-death experiences are remarkably consistent all around the world across many different religions and cultures. One common characteristic shared by almost every near-death experiencer is that they report that this experience feels so incredibly real that they completely change people's lives forever.
When people have that experience, they perceive it to represent a more fundamental level of reality than our everyday material reality that we normally live in.
These people come back and they are transformed. A very high percentage of people seem to go through a dramatic shift in their values, their orientation, and their beliefs. And they come back valuing two things: love and learning, or wisdom.
I came back with a completely new set of values. All the values I'd had before, all the important things that I seemed to be doing before were just a nonsense. And And I was just so glad to be alive.
They become less afraid of death. They lose their fear of death completely. They engage in altruism. They're more helpful to people. They engage more with family. It completely changes them. So there's something very profound about this experience that they have.
All of the patients who go through this tell us that there is one thing that comes up to them as the most important feature in their life. Every single person has told me that what they faced there was the question of how they had learned to love and whether they had put this love into practice in their lives.
I know this was not a hallucination, not a dream, not what we call a confabulation. I know that it really occurred, and I know it occurred outside of my brain. This proves that our soul, our consciousness, doesn't depend on the existence of the brain and body at all.
Hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world are telling us that this experience feels more real than real. And even if just one of these reports turns out to really be true, then that alone would change humanity forever. So we need to continue to investigate this phenomenon. We need more research in this field because the prevalence and the consistency of these experiences make it clear that there is something going on here. These are not just hallucinations. This is a very real phenomenon that seems to point to the afterlife in a very real way. We can be both scientific and spiritual when we investigate these matters. Both science and spirituality are exploring the same mystery of life. And just to open up the conversation a little bit, quantum physics is telling us that consciousness is non-local. Consciousness exists independently of the brain. And if you additionally bring into the discussion the research into DMT, psychedelics, mysticism, shamanism, remote viewing, and reincarnation, they all mutually support each other and agree that we are more than just a physical body, and there is more to life than just a physical universe. In my perspective, all of this research is inevitably headed towards a tipping point.
I think that in the next decades, quantum physics with knowledge of structure within the brain is going to take us on the verge of a reconciliation of spirituality and science that's never been experienced before, and it's going to be really amazing.
Mind may well be a separate scientific entity that can continue functioning when we reach the end of life and when the brain has stopped working. That will have huge implications for all of mankind, there's no doubt about it.
And that's the evolution and awakening of humanity that this channel is all about, where we are beginning to recognize that on the surface we may be different, but on a deeper level in our essence, we are all ultimately the same miracle of life. We are one. And that understanding is the beginning of more unity and more love amongst our human family and a better way to live together here on Mother Earth. Thank you so much as always for joining me, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It would really help me to continue creating content like this. Peace and love to every single one of you out there, and I will see you back here very soon.